It was once the centre of royal power, and now it quietly holds the line that divides the entire planet. But Greenwich is not just about longitude. Beneath its calm facades and manicured parks lies a story of buried palaces, naval revolutions, stolen meridians, and decisions that changed the world without firing a single shot. In this video, we'll trace 5 defining chapters that reveal the real Greenwich, a place where time was invented, queens were born, and empires were mapped, all while the rest of London looked the other way. Greenwich isn't just a location, it's a legacy. Before it dictated the hours of the world, Greenwich was a mystery wrapped in marshland. Its name, Greenwich, meant green settlement in Old English, but that calm image hides a much older, wilder truth. Beneath its soil, archaeologists have found Bronze Age burial mounds, Roman artifacts, and even Saxon graves, revealing that this land has seen empires rise and vanish long before the first ship ever docked on the Thames. For centuries, Greenwich stood on the edge of everything. Not quite London, not quite countryside. But that changed in the 11th century, when a surprising deal handed the land over to the Abbey of St. Peter in Ghent. Giving English land to a foreign monastery at a time of rising tension wasn't just unusual, it was risky. Yet it marked the first moment when Greenwich stopped being forgotten and started being strategic. By the 12th century, the royals had noticed. A manor house appeared by the river, built not for grandeur, but for advantage. It offered quiet, space, and most importantly, a direct line to the Thames. King Edward I walked its grounds, and others followed. Greenwich had become a royal escape, close to Westminster, but distant enough to think clearly and rule more freely. Then came an experiment that almost no one remembers today. In the 14th century, the Crown allowed the people of Greenwich a rare privilege: partial self-governance. In return, locals protected the royal shipyards, quietly rising in power without ever marching into battle. Greenwich became both loyal and untamed, a place shaped by the monarchy, but never fully controlled by it. So while most see Greenwich as the birthplace of time, its true origins are rooted in secrecy, rebellion, and forgotten power plays. Long before clocks and coordinates, this place was already bending history, quietly and with precision. If Greenwich has a heartbeat, it began pounding in the time of the Tudors. This quiet bend of the Thames became the centre of power, scandal, and succession, thanks to a palace that no longer stands, but once changed the course of English history. Its name was Placentia, meaning 1491 pleasant place. 1491, though what happened within its walls was anything but calm. Built in the 15th century by Humphrey, Duke of Gloucester, the original manor was transformed into a full royal residence by Henry VII, who saw in Greenwich not just a retreat, but a statement of power. Here, Henry VIII was born in 1491, and from these very halls he would later launch the English Reformation. This was also where he married Catherine of Aragon, and later celebrated the birth of their daughter, Mary Tudor, England's first Queen Regnant. But Placentia didn't just witness royalty, it shaped them. Elizabeth I, perhaps the most iconic monarch in English history, was born here in 1533. She spent much of her youth at Greenwich, walking its gardens, studying in its chambers, and watching the river traffic that connected her kingdom. The decisions she made later in life, on religion, exploration, and sovereignty, were seeded in this very soil. Yet, for all its significance, the Palace of Placentia vanished slowly and without fanfare. Damaged during the English Civil War and neglected for decades, it was eventually demolished in the 17th century to make way for a new naval complex. Today, only fragments remain buried beneath the old Royal Naval College, but the ghosts of queens and kings still echo through the stone. Most visitors walk the grounds unaware they're standing on the birthplace of an empire. Greenwich didn't just witness history, it raised it, fed it, and sometimes destroyed it. and the palace that once ruled the river. It's still here, in every brick that remembers. Walk along the river at dusk and you'll feel it. A strange stillness mixed with salt and stories. Greenwich has always looked toward the water, not the land. And through the centuries, the Thames carried more than ships. It carried ambition, fear, and the weight of empire. This is where Britain's maritime identity was born, brick by brick, oath by oath. The beating heart of that legacy is the Royal Hospital for Seamen, later known as the Royal Naval College, a masterpiece designed in part by Christopher Wren in the late 17th century. But the story goes deeper than architecture. The sailors who trained and rested here had often seen the edge of the world, and not all of them returned whole. Many died in silence, and their remains lie beneath the elegant courtyards, still unmarked by plaques or statues. Locals whisper of strange echoes at night, of uniforms seen through fog that vanish on approach. And then there's the Cutty Sark, the last surviving tea-clipper, now suspended in dry dock just steps from the river. Built in 1869, it was once the fastest ship on water, racing to bring tea from China before anyone else. But its past includes fire, mutiny, and sabotage, with a captain once vanishing mid-voyage under circumstances never explained. Today, families walk its decks with awe, unaware of the whispers carved into its wood by forgotten crewmen. But Greenwich's connection to the sea wasn't only military or commercial, it was spiritual. Sailors came here to heal, to rest, and sometimes to disappear. Taverns lining the old streets were filled with stories traded for rum, and not all of them were fiction. The borough was a haven for those who returned from the unknown, too changed to go back home, and too haunted to stay still. Greenwich became their quiet exile, and its silence still holds their names. Underground, another story waits. The Greenwich Foot Tunnel, completed in 1902, connects both sides of the river beneath its surface. It was a lifeline for dock workers and tradesmen, but also a route for smuggling goods and secrets. Few know that its curved iron walls were tested under pressure by firing real explosives nearby, just to prove the structure could survive a blast. Greenwich doesn't just preserve naval history, it absorbs it, hides it, and sometimes lets it slip back into view when the fog rolls in just right. This isn't a neighbourhood with maritime roots. It's a port where time, ghosts and saltwater still trade stories in silence. Have you ever walked through a place that felt like it was keeping secrets? Tell us what it made you feel. Ask most people why Greenwich matters, and they'll mention the Prime Meridian, the invisible line that splits the Earth into east and west. But few know that this line wasn't always here, and even fewer realise that its placement was the result of a global power struggle, not a scientific consensus. For centuries, different nations used their own meridians. Paris, Rome, even Washington, D.C. had their claims. It wasn't until 1884 that the world came together in Washington for the International Meridian Conference, where the question was finally settled. Where should longitude 0 begin? The United States, eager to standardize global trade and navigation, proposed Greenwich. Britain, with its vast empire and naval dominance, pushed hard for the same. France resisted fiercely, clinging to its Paris meridian until well into the 1930s, refusing to switch on maps or clocks out of pure national pride. The vote was not unanimous, but Greenwich won, not because of universal agreement, but because Britain had mapped over 70% of the world's shipping routes using Greenwich time. It was a victory of influence, not diplomacy. The Prime Meridian was drawn not where the world agreed it should be, but where power made it convenient. Even the Greenwich Observatory, the site most associated with global timekeeping, played a subtler role. Its location was chosen carefully in the 17th century to provide clear skies, minimal magnetic interference, and direct royal oversight. Time wasn't just being measured here, it was being claimed, calibrated, and broadcast as a symbol of control. So the next time you see tourists posing with one foot in each hemisphere, remember, they're standing on the outcome of a battle no one remembers, for a prize everyone still uses. After centuries of royal ceremony and maritime command, Greenwich could have faded into a genteel relic of the past, but instead it reinvented itself. In the modern era, the borough stepped away from crowns and coordinates and leaned into creativity, resistance, and reinvention. By the 20th century, Greenwich had become a symbol of transition. The shipyards closed, the palace was gone. And yet, in the ruins of empire, something new was growing. Artists moved in. Students filled the halls of the Royal Naval College, now part of the University of Greenwich, and through quiet determination, the area turned from monument to movement. During the 1970s and 80s, Greenwich became a stage for counterculture. Underground music scenes, progressive politics, and radical theatre all found a home here. The borough's layered past gave it an edge. It wasn't trying to compete with central London. It was trying to say something louder. It was a place where the weight of history only made rebellion more meaningful. What many people overlook is how Greenwich's cultural identity expanded beyond the visual and the political. It became deeply cinematic. Directors began using its streets and historic buildings as film sets, not just for period dramas, but for modern reimaginings. From Les Miserables to Thor, The Dark World, the borough has played everything from revolutionary Paris to distant galaxies. Its ability to morph, to suggest the past and the future at once, made it a favourite stage for stories too big to tell elsewhere. And it didn't stop there. The construction of the Millennium Dome at the turn of the century was controversial, mocked, and even hated at first. But it forced Greenwich back into the national spotlight. And decades later, that dome, now known as the O2 Arena, has become one of the world's busiest entertainment venues. It's ironic. A structure once seen as a failure now stands as proof of Greenwich's ability to evolve. What remains is a borough that carries its past like a shadow, never too far, never forgotten. Greenwich today is not just a museum of time, it's a living timeline. Royalty, revolution, silence, and sound, all layered across the same cobbled streets. Can a place truly move forward without forgetting who it used to be? Greenwich is often seen as a quiet corner of London, a place to visit, take a photo on the Meridian and move on. But behind every stone, every shadow, every tide, there's a story that shaped the world. This isn't just where time begins. This is where power was negotiated, identities were forged, and history never stopped whispering. Now it's your turn to speak. Did any of these chapters surprise you? Do you know a Greenwich fact most people don't? Share it in the comments. We read everyone. And if you enjoyed this journey through time, give the video a like and leave a comment so the algorithm helps more people discover the hidden side of Greenwich. Because in Greenwich, history isn't behind you, it's right beneath your feet.